The reason most people never rise is not because they lack talent, discipline, or opportunity. It is because they let the world watch them while they are still unfinished. They announce the dream before the foundation is poured. They explain the plan before the first result exists. They expose the weakest, softest, most uncertain version of themselves to people who have no business standing that close to their future. And then they wonder why their energy disappears, why their confidence gets poisoned, why one sarcastic comment from a coworker, one doubtful look from a friend, or one quiet laugh from a family member can make them question everything they were ready to build. Listen carefully. If you want to surpass 99% of people, you must disappear before you rise. Not because you are afraid. Not because you are hiding from the world. But because anything valuable is built behind walls before it is shown under lights. A skyscraper does not start with applause. It starts with dirt, steel, noise, pressure, and months of ugly work that no one stops to admire. But you want the view from the top before you can survive the basement. You want people to see your ambition before your habits can support it. You want validation for a version of yourself that does not even exist yet. That is the trap. The crowd does not need to destroy you. It only needs to watch you too early. Once people see what you want, they start placing you in a box. They remember the old you. The broke you. The emotional you. The one who started things and quit. The one who talked big and disappeared for the wrong reasons. So when you tell them you are changing, they do not see your future. They see your history. And if your mind is still weak enough to need their approval, their doubt becomes your ceiling. This is why the quiet man is dangerous in America today. While everyone else is posting every gym session, every side hustle, every coffee shop laptop photo, every motivational quote, he is not performing transformation. He is undergoing it. No announcement. No countdown. No audience. No explanation. He understands something the crowd does not. Early attention is expensive. It charges you in pressure, distraction, jealousy, and the hidden expectation to keep proving that you are still becoming someone. The average person is addicted to being seen. He confuses visibility with value. He thinks if people notice him, he must be moving forward. Wrong. Attention without results is just noise wearing a crown. The brutal truth is that 99% of people leak their power before they ever build enough power to protect themselves. They talk when they should be training. They post when they should be practicing. They explain when they should be executing. They ask for support from people who secretly benefit from them staying average. And every time they do this, they hand the crowd a map to the most fragile part of their ambition. If this makes you uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is the sound of an old illusion cracking. Because the first step toward rising is not becoming louder. It is becoming harder to read. Harder to reach. Harder to distract. Harder to drag back into the same small identity people assigned to you years ago. The world does not need to know that you are changing. It only needs to feel the difference when it is already too late to interfere. But before you can disappear with power, you must first understand the lie that trained you to expose yourself in the first place. And that lie was simple. They told you that being seen is the same as becoming valuable. They told you that if you share your goals, the right people will cheer for you. They told you that openness creates support, that vulnerability creates connection, that letting everyone know what you are building will somehow make the path easier. It sounds noble. It sounds healthy. It sounds like the kind of advice people repeat in comfortable rooms where no real ambition is being tested. But step into the real world, and you learn something colder. Most people do not hate you when you are struggling. They are comfortable with that version of you. They know where to place you. They know how to speak to you. They know how much respect to give you and how much to withhold. Your weakness gives them a sense of order. Your confusion makes them feel safe. Your smallness does not threaten their identity. That is why some people become strangely kind when you are down, but strangely distant when you begin to rise. They can handle your pain because your pain does not challenge them. They can listen to your problems because your problems keep you familiar. But the moment you begin to build discipline, save money, protect your time, train your body, change your circle, or stop reacting to every small insult, something shifts in the room. The same people who once said they wanted the best for you begin to question why you are acting different. They say you are taking things too seriously. They say you have changed. They say you think you are better than everyone else. Notice the language. They do not attack the work directly. They attack the identity forming behind the work. Because what scares the crowd is not your failure. It is the possibility that your rise will expose their excuses. If you move from average to disciplined, what does that say about the friend who has been blaming the economy for 5 years while spending every weekend escaping his own life? If you start waking up early, building skills, and refusing distractions, what does that say about the coworker who has built an entire personality around complaining but never changing? If you stop asking for approval, what does that say about the family members who trained you to feel guilty whenever you choose yourself? This is the hidden tension no one wants to admit. Your growth can feel like an accusation to people who have made peace with staying the same. You do not even need to say anything. Your discipline speaks too loudly. Your silence becomes a mirror. Your absence becomes a question they do not want to answer. That is why disappearing is not just about privacy. It is about protecting the early stage of your transformation from people who will try to pull you back into the role that makes them comfortable. They do not need to be evil. They only need to be invested in the old version of you. And that investment is enough to slow you down if you keep giving them access. Think about how many times a new decision in your life lost power after one conversation. You were excited, then someone called it unrealistic. You were focused, then someone made a joke. You were clear, then someone reminded you of every time you failed before. Suddenly the fire did not disappear all at once. It leaked. Quietly. Inch by inch. That is how the crowd wins. Not by standing in front of your future, but by making you negotiate with your past. And until you understand this, you will keep mistaking exposure for courage, when in reality, you are handing your unfinished future to people who only know how to recognize the version of you they already understand. This is where Machiavelli becomes useful, not as a museum name, not as some dusty philosopher for college classrooms, but as a cold reminder that power belongs to the person who understands timing. The average person wants to be understood while he is still building. The strategist accepts being misunderstood until his position is too strong to ignore. That difference separates the loud from the dangerous, the emotional from the disciplined, the crowd from the one who walks out of it. Machiavelli understood that the world does not reward the person who reveals everything first. It rewards the person who controls what is revealed, when it is revealed, and who is allowed to see it. A weak man treats his plan like a confession. He tells people what he wants, where he is going, what he is afraid of, what he hopes will happen, and why this time will be different. He thinks honesty will bring support. But in the game of position, unfiltered honesty often becomes free information. And free information gives other people influence they never earned. Look at every person who moves with real authority. They do not rush to explain their next move. They do not announce every sacrifice. They do not beg the crowd to understand the season they are in. They let silence protect the work. They let distance protect the mind. They let results arrive before opinions can gather around the gate. That is not arrogance. That is structure. A person without structure talks because talking gives him temporary relief. A person with structure stays quiet because he knows relief is not the goal. Position is the goal. Control is the goal. Freedom from the emotional weather of other people is the goal. Imagine a chessboard. The beginner touches a piece, hesitates, explains what he is thinking, and looks around the room for approval. The master does not do that. The master studies the board in silence. He lets others guess. He lets them misread him. He lets them grow comfortable with the wrong story. Then, when the board is arranged, the move looks sudden to everyone else, but it was never sudden to him. It was prepared in silence. That is the kind of mind you must build. Stop treating every intention like breaking news. Stop presenting your future to people who have not earned a seat at the table. Stop confusing being transparent with being powerful. Transparency without strength is not virtue. It is exposure. And exposure before structure is one of the fastest ways to lose momentum. The world does not need full access to your becoming. It does not need a daily report on your discipline. It does not need to know what you are studying, what you are saving, what you are sacrificing, or what part of your old life you are quietly removing. Your future is not a group project. Your rise is not a public discussion. And your ambition is not something you place in the hands of people who only respect what is already finished. The hard truth is this. A strategy revealed too early stops being a strategy and becomes an invitation for interference. That is why the strongest move is often the least dramatic one. Say less. Show less. Protect the unfinished version of yourself. Because before you can become impossible to ignore, you must first become impossible to read. And the reason you struggle to stay unreadable is not because you lack intelligence. It is because you are addicted to the small emotional payment that comes from being recognized before you have earned the result. That is the hidden weakness. You do not always share your plans because you need advice. Be honest. Many times, you share them because you want someone to look at you and say, "This time you are special, this time you are serious, this time we believe you." You want the feeling of progress without paying the full price of progress. You want the identity before the discipline. You want the crown before the weight of the throne. That is why talking feels so good in the beginning. It gives your brain a cheap preview of success. For a few minutes, you feel ambitious. You feel seen. You feel like the future is already moving. But nothing has changed. The bank account is the same. The body is the same. The skill level is the same. The room is the same. Only your ego has been fed. And a fed ego often becomes a lazy worker. This is the trap that destroys thousands of people in ordinary American life. A man says he is going to build a business, and for one night he feels like an entrepreneur. A woman says she is going to change her health, and for one day she feels reborn. Someone tells their friends they are done wasting time, and for a moment they feel powerful because everyone heard the announcement. But the announcement is not the transformation. The declaration is not the discipline. The applause is not the work. And the more emotional satisfaction you get from saying what you are going to do, the less hunger remains for actually doing it. That is why the old version of you keeps surviving. It knows how to get rewarded without changing. It knows how to collect compliments from intentions. It knows how to turn a future plan into a temporary identity. This is not motivation. It is self-deception wearing expensive clothes. You think you are building confidence, but you are training yourself to depend on external approval before you can move. You are teaching your ambition that it needs witnesses. That is dangerous. Because once your ambition needs witnesses, your discipline becomes fragile. If they cheer, you move. If they doubt, you freeze. If they ignore you, you feel invisible. If they laugh, you shrink. That means they are not watching your life. They are steering it. A person with power does not need the crowd to bless his first step. He does not need a committee to confirm his hunger. He does not need every sacrifice to be understood. He moves because the decision has already been made inside him. Quietly. Coldly. Completely. So ask yourself with honesty. How many goals did you truly want, and how many did you only want to be admired for wanting? How many plans were real, and how many were just costumes your ego wore for attention? The brutal truth is this. Until you stop consuming recognition like pain relief, you will keep mistaking emotional comfort for growth. You do not need more people to believe in you. You need fewer opportunities to perform. Because the part of you that keeps begging to be seen is the same part keeping you too weak to become undeniable. Once you understand that recognition can become a drug, you begin to see the deeper mechanism behind it. The easier you are to read, the easier you are to control. That is not poetry. That is power. People do not need full authority over your life to influence you. They only need access to the right emotional lever. If they know you need praise, they can feed you a little approval and pull more information out of you than you ever intended to give. If they know you fear being judged, they can raise one eyebrow and make you abandon a decision you spent weeks building. If they know you hate being misunderstood, they can trap you in endless explanations until your energy is drained and your focus is gone. This is how control works in ordinary life. It rarely looks dramatic. It looks like a comment at lunch. It looks like a joke in a group chat. It looks like a friend saying, "I am just being realistic." It looks like a family member asking why you suddenly think you are different. Small words. Small signals. Small pressure. But if your identity is still soft, those small signals become steering wheels in someone else's hands. Think of yourself as a young king with an unfinished city. The walls are not complete. The gates are not secured. The treasury is still being built. The people inside are still learning discipline. And instead of protecting that early stage, you open the gates and invite every passerby to inspect the foundation. Some will smile. Some will nod. Some will offer advice they never earned the right to give. But the problem is not only what they say. The problem is what their presence does to you. You start building with their faces in your mind. You start making decisions based on how the crowd might react. You adjust your pace so you do not look too serious. You lower your standards so you do not make others uncomfortable. You soften your ambition so it fits inside the room you should have already outgrown. That is how a life gets reduced. Not through one big defeat, but through 1,000 quiet adjustments made to remain acceptable. The crowd does not have to stop you. It only has to make you self-conscious enough to stop yourself. This is why distance is not weakness. Distance is design. Privacy is not emptiness. Privacy is protection. Silence is not the absence of confidence. Silence is confidence without the need for witnesses. When people cannot read you, they lose the ability to predict where to place pressure. When they do not know what you are building, they cannot casually step into your mental space and rearrange your focus. When they do not know what matters most to you, they cannot use it as a handle. This is the rule most average people never learn. Access creates influence. Influence creates direction. Direction repeated long enough becomes control. So the question is not whether you are talented. The question is who has access to your unfinished self. Who knows too much about your fears, your plans, your hunger, your doubts, your next move? Who have you allowed close enough to make you hesitate with one sentence? You keep asking why your discipline breaks. Look at the hands around it. Look at the voices around it. Look at the room you keep returning to when your future needs a stronger environment. A person who wants to rise cannot remain fully available to every old pattern, every old opinion, every old version of himself that other people still expect him to play. At some point, you must close the gate. Not with anger. With structure. Not to punish them. To protect what is not ready to be touched. And once the gate is closed, you finally begin to notice how much of modern life is designed to keep it open. This is the part most people do not want to examine, because the traps do not look like traps. They look normal. They look social. They look harmless. They look like a phone in your hand at 11:30 at night when you promised yourself you would sleep early. They look like a group chat where everyone jokes about ambition because nobody wants to feel behind. They look like scrolling through strangers at the gym instead of doing your own sets. They look like posting day 1 of a new routine, then quietly losing interest by day 5 when the likes stop coming. That is not transformation. That is performance wearing the mask of growth. Social media has trained people to confuse documenting the process with doing the work. A man posts his laptop at a coffee shop and feels productive before he has solved one hard problem. Someone posts a fitness goal and feels disciplined before the first month of soreness, hunger, and repetition has tested them. A person shares a quote about becoming unstoppable, then spends the next 2 hours checking who reacted to it. This is how the modern crowd steals your focus without even entering the room. It turns your private mission into public theater. And public theater always demands an audience. But the moment your growth needs an audience, your consistency becomes dependent on attention. Then come the friends. Not all of them are enemies. Many are simply loyal to the version of you that made them comfortable. They are used to the old rhythm. Same restaurants. Same complaints. Same weekends. Same jokes about being broke, tired, and stuck. So when you begin to step outside that rhythm, they feel the gap before they understand it. They say you are acting different. They say you are too serious. They say one night out will not hurt. And maybe one night will not. But the pattern will. The pattern is what keeps people average. Not one missed workout. Not one wasted Saturday. Not one unnecessary conversation. The pattern. Then there is family. This one is harder because it comes wrapped in concern. They may love you, but love does not always mean vision. Sometimes the people closest to you are only qualified to recognize who you were, not who you are becoming. They remember your mistakes. They remember your old habits. They remember the version of you that needed permission. So when you start setting boundaries, saving money, training before sunrise, studying after work, or refusing to explain every decision, they may not see discipline. They may see distance. They may see rebellion. They may see disrespect. And if you are not careful, guilt will pull you back into a smaller life than your future requires. The final trap is the environment you keep returning to. The same bedroom filled with old distractions. The same co-workers who bond through complaints. The same neighborhood conversations where every dream is treated like arrogance. The same digital noise feeding you everyone else's life while yours waits untouched. Ask yourself the uncomfortable question. Are you building a new identity inside an environment designed to preserve the old one? Because you can have ambition, but if your surroundings reward weakness, mock discipline, and make focus feel lonely, your willpower will be taxed every single day. This is why disappearance becomes necessary. Not dramatic disappearance. Strategic disappearance. Less access. Less noise. Less explaining. Less performing. Fewer rooms where your future gets laughed at before it has enough weight to stand on its own. You are not removing yourself because you hate people. You are removing yourself because your next level cannot grow in the same conditions that kept your old self alive. So the move is simple, but not easy. You disappear from the radar. Not in a theatrical way. Not by making some dramatic announcement about cutting everyone off. Not by posting a final message so people can ask what happened. That is still performance. That is still begging the crowd to notice your absence. Real disappearance is quieter. It begins when you stop offering unnecessary access. You stop telling people what you are about to do. You stop explaining why you are changing. You stop defending your new boundaries to people who benefited from your old lack of boundaries. You stop giving updates to people who only collect information so they can measure you, label you, or pull you back into the role they understand. You become harder to reach, not because you are rude, but because your time finally has a gate around it. You become harder to provoke, not because you feel nothing, but because your emotions are no longer public property. You become harder to distract, not because temptation disappeared, but because you made a decision that no longer needs applause. This is the turning point. The old you wanted witnesses. The new you want structure. The old you wanted to be believed. The new you wants to become undeniable. The old you felt guilty for being unavailable. The new you understands that constant availability is how average people rent space inside your mind without paying for it. So you begin to move differently. You wake up and do the work before the world gets a vote. You train without posting it. You save money without announcing it. You study without explaining it. You build the skill, the body, the network, the business, the discipline, the calm, the inner order, and you do it without turning the process into entertainment for people who have not earned that view. At first, it will feel strange. Silence will feel like emptiness because you are used to feeding every decision to the outside world. Privacy will feel lonely because your ego is used to applause, even cheap applause. Focus will feel uncomfortable because there is no crowd to distract you from the truth about your own inconsistency. Good. That discomfort is the withdrawal. That is the old addiction losing oxygen. Let it shake. Let it complain. Let it search for excuses. Do not open the gate. This is where you build the fortress. Not a fortress made of anger, but of standards. A bedtime. A morning routine. A financial rule. A training schedule. A study block. A smaller circle. A cleaner room. A phone that does not own your attention. A mouth that does not leak your plans. A face that does not reveal every emotional storm. Small systems. Repeated daily. Hidden from noise. Protected from opinions. That is how a person becomes dangerous without looking dramatic. When you no longer feed people data, they lose the ability to predict you. When you no longer react on command, they lose the ability to move you. When you no longer explain your transformation, they lose the right to negotiate with it. This is not isolation. This is construction. You are not vanishing because you are weak. You are withdrawing the unfinished version of yourself from the marketplace of opinions. And once that happens, something powerful begins. The crowd keeps talking, but you are no longer in the room to be shaped by it. And because you are no longer in the room to be shaped by it, something strange begins to happen. At first, they do not respect your absence. They misread it. They think you gave up. They think you became distant because you could not handle the pressure. They think your silence is confusion, your privacy is failure, your reduced availability is some temporary mood. Let them think that. Let them build the wrong story. Let them laugh quietly in the same rooms where your old name still belongs to your old habits. Their misunderstanding is useful. It keeps them looking in the wrong direction while you are becoming someone they have never met. This is the beautiful cruelty of disciplined silence. While they are guessing, you are collecting proof. While they are talking, you are stacking small wins. While they are repeating the same complaints, you are changing your schedule, your body, your money, your skills, your standards, your tolerance for nonsense, your relationship with discomfort. Nothing looks dramatic from the outside. That is the point. A real transformation does not always arrive like a parade. Sometimes it looks like an unanswered text, a declined invitation, a quiet Saturday morning, a cheap meal at home, a workout no one sees, a book opened after work, a paycheck partly saved instead of wasted, a room cleaned because chaos no longer feels normal. These things look small to the crowd because the crowd only respects what it can photograph. But power is rarely built in moments that look impressive. Power is built in repetitions that look boring until the result becomes impossible to dismiss. Then one day, they notice. Not because you announced anything. Not because you begged them to look. They notice because your presence has changed. Your posture is different. Your eyes are calmer. Your words are fewer. Your reactions are slower. Your schedule is harder to access. Your standards have edges now. The old jokes do not land the same way. The old pressure does not move you the same way. The old guilt does not pull you back with the same strength. And that is when confusion enters their faces. They were prepared to meet the old you. They brought the same lines, the same memories, the same small labels, the same tired version of your story. But you are no longer available for that role. That is the return they cannot process. Not a loud return. A cold return. The kind where you do not need to say, "I told you." Your life says it quietly. The kind where the people who once questioned your seriousness now watch how little access they have to your mind. They used to know how to provoke you. Now they cannot reach the switch. They used to know how to make you explain yourself. Now you let silence stand between you and their opinion like a locked iron door. They used to know how to make you feel small. Now their words fall short because your identity is no longer being built in their hands. This is what it means to become difficult to control. Not untouchable because nothing hurts you, but untouchable because your direction no longer depends on who approves of it. You stopped performing the climb, so they missed the construction. You stopped feeding them updates, so they lost the map. You stopped asking to be understood, so they lost the power to define you. And when they finally realize you have moved beyond the version of you they were comfortable judging, the room changes. Some will respect you. Some will resent you. Some will suddenly want access again. Stay calm. The point was never to make them clap. The point was to make yourself so structured, so steady, so quietly improved, that even their opinion becomes too small to interrupt your path. And if their opinion has become too small to interrupt your path, then the final test begins. Not the test of whether you can feel inspired for one night. Not the test of whether you can sound wise in a conversation. The real test is whether you can build a private standard and obey it when nobody rewards you for it. Because this entire journey was never about looking mysterious. It was never about punishing people with silence. It was never about becoming cold for the sake of being cold. It was about taking your future out of the marketplace of opinions and placing it back under your command. Look at the path clearly. First, you were too visible while unfinished. Then you learned that the crowd is comfortable with your weakness but uncomfortable with your rise. Then you saw that timing, distance, and controlled information are not games. They are protection. You faced the ugly addiction to early recognition. You saw how easy it was for people to steer you when they could read every fear, every plan, every hunger inside you. You saw the traps of modern life, the phone, the noise, the group chat, the old room, the old rhythm, the old guilt. Then you withdrew. Quietly. Strategically. You stopped feeding people access to the version of you that was still under construction. And now, if you have listened with a serious mind, you know exactly what must happen next. For the next 30 days, disappear from everything that does not strengthen you. Do not announce the mission. Do not explain the shift. Do not publish your progress for approval. Do not defend your new discipline to people who are still married to their old excuses. Do not argue with anyone who only understands the version of you they can control. For 30 days, let your life become simple and severe. Wake up when you said you would. Train your body even when the mirror gives you no applause. Save money even when spending would make you feel important for one afternoon. Study the skill even when your mind begs for easy entertainment. Clean your environment until disorder no longer feels like home. Reduce your access until your time becomes expensive again. Speak less than your ego wants to. React slower than your emotions demand. Build more than your mood permits. This is how a person crosses the line from intention into identity. Not with drama. With repetition. Not with noise. With standards. Not with public promises. With private obedience. And there will be moments when the old you tries to return. It will ask for one more explanation. One more post. One more conversation to make people